This designated driver insisted on leaving the club early because she felt responsible for her friend's safety. But then she drove 20 minutes in the wrong direction and literally abandoned her friend at a random gas station at 1 a.m. just to go see her boyfriend. Is the friend wrong for demanding she pay for the Uber home, or is this the worst friend in history? And that is just the opener. We've also got a heartbreaking family betrayal over a child-free wedding that wasn't actually child-free, and a coworker with the absolute audacity to demand someone else's paid-for vacation because she thinks parents matter more. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel where we break down the absolute wildest Reddit AITA stories every single day. If you live for the drama, the moral dilemmas, and watching entitled people get shut down, you are definitely in the right place. We are pushing hard for that 10K subscriber milestone, and having you here means the world to me. So please hit that like button to help the algorithm, make sure you're subscribed, and let's jump right into this first story. Because trust me, this one is going to make your blood boil. Am I the asshole for making my friend pay for my Uber home after she surprised me? All right, buckle up because we're about to dive into what might be the most passive-aggressive designated driver situation I've seen in a while. This story has it all: fake concern, manipulation tactics, a random gas station at 1 a.m., and a Venmo request that apparently broke the internet. And honestly, I'm here for every chaotic second of it. So our writer goes out with friends. Normal Friday night vibes. One friend, let's call her Sarah because that's literally what the writer calls her, volunteers to be the designated driver. She's staying sober, not drinking, the whole responsible friend routine. Great, love that energy. Everyone's having a good time, music's bumping, drinks are flowing, life is good. But then, at 1 a.m., Sarah suddenly decides she's too tired and wants to leave. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Our writer is like, open quote, "Hey, no worries. I'm actually having a great time. I'll just Uber home later." Close quote. Perfectly reasonable response, right? They're an adult. They can get themselves home. Problem solved. But Sarah? Oh, no, no, no. Sarah insists she feels responsible for the writer and wouldn't leave without them. She kept pushing and pushing until it turned into a whole thing in the middle of the club. And our writer, not wanting to cause a scene or argue at 1 a.m. in a crowded club, just gave in and left with her. Let me just pause here to say, if someone tells you they're good and they'll get their own ride home, and you force them to leave with you because you feel responsible, you better actually be responsible. That's like rule number one of the social contract you just created. Yeah? So they get to Sarah's car. Ryder probably thinks, open quote, "Okay, cool, going home now. This is fine," close quote. And that's when Sarah drops the bomb. Open quote, "Actually, I'm going to go to my BF's place. It's closer," close quote. I'm sorry, what? His place is 20 minutes in the opposite direction from the writer's house. Not like, oh, it's on the way. Not, it's just a quick detour. 20 minutes, the opposite way. So let me get this straight. Sarah felt so responsible for the writer that she couldn't possibly leave them at a club with other friends, security, staff, and, general civilization. But she's perfectly fine driving them away from their house and then just ditching them. Make it make sense. Seriously. I'll wait. So Sarah drives to a gas station near her boyfriend's house and tells the writer to just call a ride from there. Just casually abandons them at a gas station at 1 a.m. after insisting they leave the club for safety. The audacity, the nerve, the absolute lack of self-awareness is honestly impressive. The Uber back to the writer's place cost $25 because of surge pricing. And here's the thing. If Sarah had just left the writer at the club like they originally wanted, they would have paid for their own Uber and been totally fine with it. No complaints. That was literally the plan. But Sarah forced them to leave, drove them in the wrong direction, and then dumped them at a random gas station. So our writer sent her a Venmo request for the $25. And now Sarah is mad. She's saying the writer is ungrateful because she already gave them a ride. The other friends are chiming in saying the writer is being petty over 25 bucks. Let's break down exactly why this is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, Sarah didn't give them a ride. She gave them a ride to a place they didn't want to go that was farther from their actual destination, and then left them there. That's not a favor. That's basically kidnapping with extra steps. Like if I offered you a ride to work and then dropped you off at a McDonald's 3 towns over, would you thank me? No. You'd be like, open quote, what the hell is wrong with you? Close quote. Second, the felt responsible excuse is wild. You felt responsible enough to make someone leave a safe environment with their friends, but not responsible enough to actually take them home. That math isn't mathing. The logic isn't logicking. And can we talk about how leaving someone at a gas station at 1 a.m. is somehow supposed to be safer than leaving them at a club with their friends? Gas stations at 1 a.m. are not exactly known for their top tier security and welcoming atmosphere. This is literally the opposite of keeping someone safe. The comments on this post are going off, and honestly, they're all saying what we're thinking. Commenter used Shorty Moonorty absolutely nailed it. Open quote, NTA, so she felt responsible for you but was fine leaving you at a gas station alone? Math isn't mathing. Close quote, exactly. The math is not mathing. The responsible is not responsibling. Commenter u// clean alp score 45768 brought up an excellent point. Open quote. Friend wanted to separate OP from the group. Sounds like some underlying issues at play with their group dynamic. Close quote. Ooh, this is interesting. Because yeah, why did Sarah need to physically remove the writer from the club? If she just wanted to leave, she could have left. Why the performance of concern followed by complete abandonment? Something's fishy here. And commenter u/icehot54321 said, open quote, probably this, but not worth fighting them over $25. They'll likely never pay. They will never admit anything. And the only end result is more infighting and dragging other people into an argument that has no resolution. Best to just be the bigger person and just let it go. Take it as a lesson. Close quote, which honestly, fair take. Sometimes you got to cut your losses. But commenter Dr. Dirtberg had the perfect response. Open quote, $25 to learn your friend is disloyal and shitty is a pretty good deal. Close quote. Gah, now we're talking. This is the real perspective right here. $25 to find out someone is a terrible friend who will manipulate you, inconvenience you, put you in an unsafe situation, and then get mad when you call them out. That's actually a bargain. Some people spend years and thousands of dollars before they figure out who their real friends are. Commenter You Reaper Us Squirrels went hard. Open quote, fuck that. Fight for the money. Drop her as a friend, and drop any others that defend her. Let them deal with her while you are around people you can trust. The bigger person argument is always the war cry of doormats that have been abused to think keeping the peace is the best thing you can do. Close quote. And you know what? They've got a point. Be the bigger person is often just code for let people walk all over you so nobody has to deal with uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes you got to stand up for yourself, even if it's over $25. It's about the principle. Commenter OK Ingenuity 9313 said, open quote, be the bigger person is a phrase that has got to go. If someone cuts you off in traffic, by all means, be the bigger person and get on with your day. But in a situation like this, why not stand up for yourself and call out the outrageous behavior? No need to be the bigger doormat. Close quote. Be the bigger doormat. I'm deceased. That's exactly what people mean when they say be the bigger person in situations like this. They mean just let it slide so we don't have to deal with drama. But sometimes the drama is justified. Now let's talk about the safety aspect because this is genuinely concerning. Multiple commenters pointed out how dangerous Sarah's actions were. Commenter u/audiaxblood said, open quote, if you watch true crime, she essentially set this person up to be an episode. How many people have disappeared only to have their bodies discovered years later or sometimes never because they were in an unfamiliar place by themselves? Close quote. Yikes, but also not wrong. Like, this is literally how true crime podcasts start. Open quote. She was last seen at a gas station at 1 a.m. after her friend dropped her off. Close quote. It's not being dramatic to point out that leaving someone alone at a gas station in the middle of the night is genuinely unsafe, especially if that person has been drinking. The writer wasn't even at the club anymore, where there were bouncers, staff, other people, lights, cameras. Sarah removed them from that environment and left them somewhere more isolated and vulnerable. and she did it while claiming to be the responsible one. The hypocrisy is stunning. Commenter U Jimer Stick said, open quote, "If I saw a girl in clubbing clothes alone in a gas station, I would husband pull over so I could go ask if she was okay and needed help. I can't imagine they'd want a ride from a stranger, but I would offer to stay by while their Uber came, or offer to call the Uber slash charge their phone if they needed it. That's girl code. This is like actively putting your friend in a situation that makes them more likely to be assaulted. I am seething for OP." Close quote. This is what actual concern for someone's safety looks like, not whatever performative nonsense Sarah was pulling. Now, the writer did comment that they don't think Sarah meant anything malicious, but honestly, intent doesn't always matter when the impact is this bad. Even if Sarah didn't wake up that morning like, open quote, "Today I'm going to be the worst friend possible," close quote, her actions were still selfish, manipulative, and potentially dangerous. Several commenters think Sarah just wanted someone to walk her to her car because she didn't want to leave the club alone, which actually makes sense. That could explain why she insisted the writer leave with her. But here's the thing, if that's what you need, say that. Open quote, "Hey, I'm ready to leave, but I don't want to walk to my car alone. Can you walk me out?" Close quote. The writer probably would have said yes. Then they could have gone back inside and everyone would have been happy. But instead, Sarah created this whole elaborate scenario where she felt responsible and then didn't follow through on that responsibility at all. Commenter u/wet had an interesting theory. Open quote, "I think Sarah wanted to go to her BF, but she also didn't want to seem like someone who would ditch her friend to be alone at night to be with a guy. And she dumped OP at the gas station because Sarah could then act like she technically gave OP a ride and that she just happened to decide to be with her BF, like it wasn't planned. Plus, it was out of sight of her other friends." Close quote. This is juicy. So basically, Sarah wanted to look like a good friend without actually being a good friend. She wanted the credit for being responsible without the inconvenience of actually being responsible. That's some next level performative friendship right there. And you know what? That tracks. Because if Sarah really just wanted to see her boyfriend, she could have just left and let the writer stay at the club with their other friends, been honest about her plans from the be dropped the writer off first before going to her boyfriend's when the editor's next. But no, she made it into this whole production where she's the concerned friend who just has to make sure everyone gets home safe, and then she drives someone in the wrong direction and abandons them. For what? To maintain an image? To not look boy crazy in front of their friends? Whatever the reason, it's manipulative as hell. The writer mentioned in a comment that Sarah didn't tell them about the boyfriend plan until they were already driving. So the writer couldn't even make an informed decision. If Sarah had been upfront, like, open quote, "Hey, I actually want to go to my boyfriend's place. Are you cool to Uber from here?" Close quote, the writer could have said, "Nah, I'll just stay at the club and Uber later." But Sarah waited until they were already in the car, already committed, already leaving. That's some calculated behavior right there. Um, Whether it was conscious or not, Sarah backed the writer into a corner where it would be awkward to demand to be taken back to the club, so the writer just went along with it. Commenter U's belief in philosophy laid it out perfectly. Open quote, "At every step of the way, she forced you to do what she wanted. She forced you to leave through manipulation. She forced you to get out of the car at a gas station and not your house. She forced you to get an expensive Uber and wait there alone. Now she's forcing you to pay for it." Close quote. When you put it like that, it's actually kind of disturbing. This isn't just one bad decision. This is a pattern of controlling behavior where Sarah made sure everything went the way she wanted, regardless of what the writer wanted or needed. And then, after all of that, Sarah has the audacity to be mad about a $25 Venmo request. The writer is being called petty and ungrateful. For what exactly? Being ungrateful for being driven away from home and abandoned at a gas station? Yeah, I'd be ungrateful for that too. That's not a favor. That's not something you should be thankful for. Let's do some quick math here. Club to writer's house. Let's say it would have been a $15 to $20 Uber normally. Club to gas station, 20 minutes in the wrong direction. made the Uber $25 with surge pricing, extra cost caused by Sarah's decisions at minimum $5 to $10, but really the whole $25 since the writer didn't want to leave in the first place. So Sarah's favor actually cost the writer money compared to their original plan. Some favor. Commenter u/coldmap-3005e3 suggested the writer put the whole story in the group chat, bullet point style, so everyone can see exactly what happened. 1, she essentially demanded that she take you home after you told her you would make alternate plans. 2, took you away from the group safety. 3, drove you in the opposite direction. 4, abandoned you at a gas station, intoxicated and in clubbing clothes. This right here is the real issue. It's the exact opposite of girl code, period. And honestly, yeah, because I guarantee Sarah is telling a very different version of this story to their friends. She's probably like, open quote, I gave her a ride and she sent me a Venmo request. Can you believe it? Close quote dot, and leaving out all the important context. The context being that she insisted on giving a ride the writer didn't want, drove them somewhere they didn't want to go, and then abandoned them in an unsafe situation. Context matters. If you tell people, open quote, I bought my friend lunch and they sent me a Venmo request, close quote, that sounds bad. But if the full story is, open quote, I forced my friend to leave the restaurant where they were eating with other people, drove them to a different restaurant in another town, left them there, and then got mad when they asked me to pay for their meal. Close quote. Suddenly, you're the villain. Multiple people asked if Sarah at least waited with the writer until the Uber arrived, and the writer didn't really clarify, which honestly, I'm guessing the answer is no. Because if Sarah had waited with them to make sure they got in their Uber safely, the writer probably would have mentioned that as a redeeming factor. The fact that it's not mentioned suggests Sarah just drove off, left them there at 1 a.m. at a gas station. That's what she considers feeling responsible. Wild. Commenter Real Boxes of Boxes said, open quote, you need to tell everyone. The whole group needs to know about this so they don't do this to them too. She took you out of the group and then abandoned you at a gas station. Like, does she secretly hate you? Was she trying to get you kidnapped or something? Close quote. This raises another excellent question. What the hell was Sarah's endgame here? Like, what did she think was going to happen? Did she think the writer would just be like, open quote, oh, cool, thanks for the ride to this random gas station 20 minutes from my house. You're such a good friend. Close quote. Did she think there wouldn't be consequences? Did she think the writer would just eat the cost and never bring it up? Or did she genuinely not think of the writer at all once she got what she wanted, a ride to her boyfriend's without looking selfish? The more you think about it, the weirder it gets. Every possible explanation makes Sarah look bad. Either she's completely self-absorbed and didn't think about how her actions would affect the writer, manipulative and knew exactly what she was doing, so desperate to maintain a certain image that she'll screw over her friends to do it, just genuinely has terrible judgment and decision-making skills. None of these are great options for someone you want in your life. Some commenters wondered if maybe Sarah was trying to separate the writer from the group for some specific reason. Maybe the writer was getting attention Sarah wanted. Maybe there was drama Sarah was trying to control. Maybe Sarah just wanted to ruin the writer's good time because misery loves company. We don't know. But what we do know is that Sarah's behavior makes no sense if her actual motivation was keeping the writer safe. The logic doesn't hold up under even the tiniest bit of scrutiny. Let's look at the keeping you safe claim. Safe option, staying at the club with friends, bouncers, security staff in a well-lit public place. Sarah's option, random gas station at 1 a.m., alone, in clubbing clothes, possibly intoxicated in an area you're not familiar with. Yeah, Sarah's really worried about safety there. Super concerned, doing the most to keep her friends secure. The whole thing reeks of someone who wanted to look like a good person without actually being a good person. It's performative friendship. It's Instagram activism. It's all aesthetics and no substance. And then when called out on it, instead of apologizing or acknowledging that maybe they didn't handle it great, Sarah got defensive and started playing the victim. Open quote, I gave you a ride and you're ungrateful, close quote. No acknowledgement of the actual issue. No self-reflection, just immediate defensiveness. That tells you everything you need to know about Sarah as a person. Commenter U Familiar Shock 1542 pointed out, open quote, sending a Venmo is not drama, close quote. And this is so important. The writer didn't blast Sarah on social media. They didn't call her out in front of everyone. They didn't start a whole thing. They just quietly sent a Venmo request for the money Sarah's decisions cost them. That's actually a pretty calm, mature way to handle it. If anything, Sarah is the one creating drama by refusing to pay and complaining to other friends about it. The writer is just trying to be made whole after being inconvenienced and put in a crappy situation. Commenter U Insipid Celebrity said, open quote, the best way to get people you don't like to scram is to remind them that they owe you money. You don't have to necessarily expect to collect. Close quote. This is actually galaxy brain energy. Even if Sarah never pays, which let's be real, she probably won't, the Venmo request serves as a permanent reminder of what she did. Every time she looks at it, she has to think about that night. And if she's telling people the writer is being petty, they might ask, open quote, wait, why do you owe them money? Close quote dot. And then she has to explain the whole situation. Sometimes the real payment is making someone uncomfortable with their own actions. Now let's address the people saying the writer should just let it go and be the bigger person. No, absolutely not. Hard pass. Being the bigger person is for minor inconveniences. Someone accidentally steps on your foot, be the bigger person. Someone forgets to text you back, be the bigger person. Someone forces you to leave somewhere you wanted to be, drives you in the wrong direction, abandons you in an unsafe location, and then gets mad when you ask them to take responsibility for the extra expense they caused you. Nope. That's not a be the bigger person situation. That's a this person disrespected you and your safety, and you have every right to stand up for yourself situation. Commenter U/shit in a bag said, open quote, yup, being the bigger person just means you are the one taking all the shit. Screw that. Put it on the person it belongs. Close quote. Thank you. Being the bigger person has become code for be a doormat. It's become a way to pressure people into not standing up for themselves because it might make other people uncomfortable. But you know what? Sometimes people should be uncomfortable. Sometimes that discomfort is what makes them realize they messed up. By sending the Venmo request, the writer is saying, open quote, hey, your actions had consequences, and I'm not just going to absorb those consequences silently. Close quote. That's not petty, that's healthy boundaries. And honestly, if their mutual friends think asking for $25 after being abandoned at a gas station is petty, they might need to evaluate their own standards for friendship, because that's a pretty low bar we're working with here. The writer commented, open quote, After I felt like I was losing my mind because my other friends were saying I was being petty. Glad someone gets it, lol. Close quote. This is such a relatable feeling. When multiple people are telling you you're wrong, you start to question yourself even when you know you're right. It's gaslighting by committee. But just because multiple people agree on something doesn't make them right. Sometimes groups of friends develop really unhealthy dynamics where certain behaviors get normalized, and anyone who pushes back gets labeled as dramatic or petty. It's like that whole missing stair concept when there's a broken stair in a house, and instead of fixing it, everyone just learns to step over it and warns newcomers about it. That's what's happening here. Sarah is the missing stair. She does inconsiderate stuff, and instead of addressing it, everyone just goes, open quote, oh, that's just how Sarah is, close quote, dot, and expects people to deal with it. But our writer isn't stepping over the missing stair. They're pointing at it and saying, open quote, hey, this is broken and someone could get hurt, close quote. And everyone else is like, open quote, wow, why are you being so dramatic about a stair? Close quote. No, the stair is broken. Fix the damn stair. Commenter U Tuna Score Pie suggested, open quote, ask them to explain how randomly leaving you at a gas station in the opposite direction from your house after you were told you were being given a ride home is a good thing. Close quote. This is the move right here. Make them explain it. Make them defend Sarah's actions out loud. Because when you actually have to articulate, open quote, It's totally fine to drive someone away from their house and abandon them at a gas station, close quote. You start to realize how ridiculous it sounds. A lot of times people defend their friends reflexively without actually thinking about what they're defending. They hear, open quote, she's mad about $25, close quote, and think that's petty without considering the full context of why there's a $25 charge in the first place. So, yeah, make them explain it. Watch them twist themselves into logical pretzels trying to justify the unjustifiable. It's enlightening. Now let's talk about what the writer should do moving forward. First, don't expect to see that $25. Sarah has already shown she's not going to take responsibility for her actions. She's going to die on this hill of, open quote, I gave you a ride, you're ungrateful, close quote. The $25 is gone. Accept it and move on. However, second, consider that $25 the price of finding out who Sarah really is. You got off cheap. Now you know. She's manipulative. She's selfish. She values her image over your actual safety. She won't take responsibility when she messes up. She'll try to make you look bad when you call her out. That's valuable information. Some people spend years slowly figuring this stuff out about their friends. You got the crash course for $25. In the grand scheme of things, that's not a bad deal. Third, seriously reconsider this friendship, not just with Sarah, but with the friends who are defending her. Anyone who thinks abandoning someone at a gas station is no big deal is someone you should probably keep at arm's length. They've shown you their values. Believe them. Fourth, trust your gut next time. The writer knew they wanted to stay at the club. They had a plan, but they let Sarah pressure them into leaving. Next time someone is being pushy like that, stand firm. It's okay to say, open quote, I appreciate your concern, but I'm good. You can go ahead. Close quote. It's okay to not give in just to avoid awkwardness, because look what giving in to avoid awkwardness got them. A more expensive Uber, a potentially dangerous situation, and a friend who's now calling them petty for completely reasonable frustration. The awkwardness of saying no thanks at the club would have been way less than all of this. Fifth, tell the truth if people ask. Don't let Sarah control the narrative. If your mutual friends want to know what happened, tell them the whole story. Not in a dramatic, open quote, can you believe what she did, close quote, way, but just factually. Open quote, she insisted I leave with her, drove me 20 minutes in the opposite direction of my house, dropped me at a gas station, and told me to get an Uber from there. The Uber cost $25, and I asked her to pay for it since I wouldn't have needed it if she'd just let me stay at the club like I wanted. Close quote, facts. No emotion, just what happened. Let people draw their own conclusions. And you know what? The people who respond with open quote, wow, that's messed up, close quote, are your people. The ones who respond with open quote, you're being petty, close quote, have shown you who they are. Sort accordingly. Let's also address the few commenters who suggested maybe the writer was super drunk and being unsafe, which is why Sarah felt the need to intervene. The writer clarified, open quote, no, I wasn't overly drunk or doing anything unsafe. I had a couple drinks, but was completely fine and aware. Close quote. So that theory is out. This wasn't an intervention. This wasn't, I can't leave my blackout drunk friend alone. This was just Sarah wanting to leave and making it everyone else's problem. But even if the writer had been drunk, that makes what Sarah did worse, not better. If you're so concerned about your drunk friend that you can't leave them at a club with other friends, you definitely shouldn't leave them alone at a gas station. That's not taking care of someone. That's abandoning them in an even more vulnerable state. So that justification doesn't hold water either. There's literally no scenario where Sarah's actions make sense if her motivation was genuinely the writer's safety. Okay, so let's get to the final verdict because I have thoughts. Is the writer the asshole? Hell, no. Not even a little bit. Not even 0.0001%. The writer tried to handle the situation surely by offering to get their own ride, didn't make a scene when Sarah was being pushy, got put in an unsafe and inconvenient situation through no fault of their own, sent a reasonable request for reimbursement, is asking for exactly the amount they had to spend, not inflating it. Sarah forced someone to leave when they didn't want to, drove them in the wrong direction under false pretenses, abandoned them at a gas station at 1 a.m., refuses to take any responsibility, is playing the victim when called out, has somehow convinced other friends that she's the wronged party here. The math is definitely not mathing on this one, folks. Not the asshole. The writer is someone who got manipulated by a selfish friend and is reasonably asking to be compensated for the financial impact of that friend's terrible decisions. That's not being an asshole. That's having boundaries and self-respect. Sarah is someone who cares more about appearances than actual friendship, who will manipulate and convenience people to get what she wants, and who refuses to acknowledge when she's wrong. That's being an asshole. And the friends defending Sarah, they're either not getting the full story or they're enablers who've normalized her crappy behavior to the point where they don't even see it as wrong anymore. Either way, not great. The $25 isn't really about the money. It's about respect. It's about accountability. It's about saying, open quote, your actions affected me, and I'm not going to pretend they didn't, close quote. If Sarah had any decency, she would have responded to that Venmo request with an apology and payment. Open quote, oh my God, you're right. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking about how that would affect you. Let me pay for your Uber and buy you coffee to apologize for being such a mess. Close quote. That's what a real friend does when they mess up. They own it, they apologize, they make it right. But Sarah didn't do that. She got defensive and started calling the writer ungrateful. That tells you everything about what kind of friend she is. So, writer, if you're reading this, you're not the asshole, you're not petty, you're not ungrateful. You're someone with reasonable expectations who got screwed over by a selfish friend. Take the L on the $25, but take the W. Take the W on learning who Sarah really is before she could do something even worse. Ghost that friend. Reevaluate the friends who defended her. Find people who actually give a damn about your safety and well-being. And next time someone's being pushy about something you don't want to do, stand your ground. The temporary awkwardness of saying no is way better than the lasting resentment of being manipulated into something you didn't want. Also, she felt responsible for you but was fine leaving you at a gas station needs to become the new way we describe performative friendship. That's the energy check we all need. If someone says they care but their actions show otherwise, believe the actions. To sum up, not the asshole. Not even close. Sarah is trash, that friendship is toxic, and $25 is a bargain price to learn that lesson. The writer handled this way better than Sarah deserved, honestly. Now go find better friends who don't abandon people at gas stations and then have the audacity to act like victims when called out. The bar is literally on the floor, and Sarah still managed to limbo under it. Am I the asshole for refusing to attend my sister's child-free wedding after she made an exception for our cousin? All right, everyone. Grab your popcorn and settle in because we're diving headfirst into some wedding drama. And not just any wedding drama. We're talking about the kind of messy family situation that's going to have consequences echoing through Thanksgiving dinners for years to come. This is the type of story that makes you go, oh, hell no, out loud while reading it. And trust me, I did exactly that multiple times. So let's set the scene. Our writer has a younger sister who's getting married in a few months. Cool, exciting, happy times, right? Wrong. Because from jump, little sis made it crystal clear that this would be a child-free wedding. She wants that elegant adult vibe and doesn't want to worry about kids running around during the ceremony or reception. Now look, I get it. Child-free weddings are a thing. Some people want that sophisticated atmosphere without worrying about a 4-year-old having a meltdown during the vows or a toddler face planting into the wedding cake. That's fine. That's your choice as a bride and groom. Do your thing. But here's where it gets spicy. Our writer has 2 kids, ages 6 and 4. She admits she was disappointed because her kids are close with their aunt, the bride who apparently doesn't want them at her wedding, but she respected the decision. Let me repeat that. She respected the decision. She didn't throw a fit, didn't guilt trip, didn't try to negotiate. She just accepted it like a mature adult and moved on. And not only that, she and her husband went above and beyond to make accommodations. They arranged for the in-laws to watch the kids for the entire weekend since the wedding is out of town. They're covering travel costs for the in-laws to come stay with the kids. They're getting a hotel near the venue for themselves. This is adding up to some serious money, by the way. We're talking potentially hundreds, if not over $1,000 in extra expenses just to accommodate this child-free rule. But our writer did it anyway because she loves her sister and wants to be there for her big day. That's being a good sister right there, folks. So everything's arranged, everyone's moving forward, plans are in motion, money's being spent, and then our writer finds out through mom, not even directly from the sister, mind you, that cousin is bringing her two kids, ages 8 and 10, to the wedding. Hold up. Let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The wedding is child-free, but cousin's kids get a pass? Make it make sense. Our writer understandably confused because what the actual hell asks her sister about it. And what's the sister's excuse? Oh, well, cousin is flying in from across the country and doesn't have anyone she trusts to leave the kids with for that long, so they're making an exception. I'm sorry, but are we supposed to believe that in this entire country, across all the states cousin might be coming from, there's not a single trustworthy person who can watch two kids who are 8 and 10 years old? Not one family member, not one friend, not one professional childcare service? Nothing? For kids who are old enough to wipe their own butts and make themselves a sandwich? Give me a break. Our writer very reasonably points out that she is also traveling about 4 hours away and that she had to rearrange everything to make this work. But apparently that doesn't count because it's not the same. Why? Because cousin would need overnight care for several days, whereas the writer only needs it for a weekend. Um, I'm pretty sure a weekend is several days. Like, that's literally what a weekend is. Multiple days, overnight. The math ain't mathing here, sis. And here's what really gets me. The writer reminds her sister that her childcare situation is also overnight, and they also had to pay for extra arrangements. But nope, apparently that still doesn't count in sister's twisted logic. You know what this is? This is the bride wanting to have her cake and eat it too. She wants the aesthetic of a child-free wedding, but she also doesn't want to deal with the pushback from certain people, so she's making arbitrary exceptions and hoping everyone else will just roll with it. Spoiler alert, they won't. What really bothered the writer, and honestly what would bother any reasonable person, isn't even that the kids are going to be there. It's that the rule suddenly isn't a rule anymore. It's that there's a blatant double standard happening. It's that her kids adore their aunt and would be crushed to know they weren't invited, but their second cousins, who they probably barely know, were. And let's talk about how those kids are going to find out, because they will find out. Kids aren't stupid. When they see wedding photos with other children in them, or when cousins' kids mention it at the next family gathering, or when literally anyone talks about it, the writer's kids are going to know they were specifically excluded while other kids weren't. How do you think that's going to make them feel? How do you think that's going to impact their relationship with their aunt? Spoiler, not great. So our writer does what any person with a spine would do. She tells her sister that if it's not truly child-free and exceptions are being made, then she'd prefer to bring her kids too. Seems fair, right? Nope. Sister says absolutely not, because she's already stressed and doesn't want to open the floodgates. Oh, so now we're worried about floodgates. Where was this concern when you made the first exception? You can't open the dam a little bit and then act shocked when more water wants to come through. That's not how this works. When the writer says that in that case, she and her husband might not attend because it feels like they're being treated differently, the sister loses it. She says the writer is making her wedding about her and punishing her over one small accommodation. Let's unpack that for a second. First of all, pointing out a double standard is not making it about you. It's calling out unfair treatment. Big difference. Second, the writer isn't punishing anyone. She's making a choice about whether she wants to spend significant money and effort to attend an event where she and her family are being treated as less important than other guests. That's not punishment, that's self-respect. Third, if it's such a small accommodation, then why can't you make the same one for your sister and her kids, who you supposedly have a close relationship with? The mom, because of course mom has to get involved, thinks the writer should just let it go because it's her day. And the husband thinks it's unfair, but says he'll support whatever she decides. At least the husband has some sense. Now let's talk about this. It's her day. Bullshit, because I am so tired of hearing this excuse for brides acting like tyrants. Yes, it's your wedding day. Yes, you get to make choices about your wedding. But you know what? Your choices have consequences. And one of those consequences might be that people decide not to attend because you're treating them unfairly. You don't get to make arbitrary rules, apply them inconsistently, and then cry victim when people call you out on it. That's not how life works, and it's definitely not how family relationships work. The comments section on this post is absolutely wild, and we need to break some of them down because there's a whole range of opinions here. Commenter Use Wildwood Shadow says, nah, no assholes here, but asks the real question. Why does a cousin rank higher than a sister? Exactly. That's what I want to know. Is this cousin some kind of best friend or just a random relative you see at occasional reunions? Because if it's the latter, what the hell are we doing here? Commenter You Christmas Queen 2022 adds, right? That's what I don't understand. And if sister's kids are close with the aunt, the one getting married, why aren't they the exception too? Thank you. If you're going to make exceptions based on relationships, shouldn't your actual nieces and nephews who you have a close relationship with be higher priority than second cousins? But then we get into the age debate because, of course, we do. Commenter UC Parker LPN suggests maybe it's about the ages. 8 and 10 are much more likely to be able to behave through a wedding than a 4 and 6-year-old. Okay, look, I hear this argument and I'm going to address it head on because it keeps coming up. Yes, older kids are generally better behaved than younger kids. That's just developmental reality. An 8 and 10-year-old can probably sit through a ceremony without having a meltdown, whereas a 4-year-old might get antsy. But, and this is a big but, if behavior is the concern, then the rule should be no kids under X age, not child-free with random exceptions. You don't get to say child-free and then go, oh, well, except for these specific children because reasons. That's not a child-free wedding. That's a some children are allowed wedding. And when you frame it that way, it becomes very obvious why people are pissed. Commenter Yuzu Trin Lake puts forth another theory, or it's about the particular kids. Cousins' kids may have already demonstrated that they can behave properly for a lengthy formal event, and either siblings' kids haven't mobbed, or have demonstrated that they won't behave within the expected parameters of behavior. Okay, so now we're saying the writer's kids are badly behaved? Based on what evidence? The writer never says her kids are terrors. She says they're close with their aunt and would be crushed not to be included. That doesn't sound like problem children to me. And you know what? Even if the writer's kids are more rambunctious than cousins' kids, which is pure speculation, you still don't handle it this way. You don't make up a blanket rule and then exceptions based on which specific children you personally deem acceptable. That's just rude. Commenter use/account was found brings up a fair point. Honestly, I'd be surprised if there were many 4-year-olds that could be perfectly behaved for an entire wedding. Whereas I know by 8, I was pretty regularly expected to sit there and behave for formal events, much less by 10. Fine, sure. But again, this comes back to if age is the issue, say that. Don't say child-free when what you mean is no kids under 7 or whatever arbitrary cutoff you want to use. The thing about having clear rules is that people can plan around them. If the sister had said from the beginning, no kids under 8 or only kids over 10, then the writer would have known where she stood and could have made her decision accordingly. But to say child-free and then make exceptions, that's just messy, and it's going to piss people off. Several commenters shared their own experiences with well-behaved young kids at weddings. Commenter u/kittyfantastico85 says, admittedly, my nieces were 5 and 9 at my wedding, but they were both so well behaved. A lot of people commented on it. There were even pictures taken of the 5-year-old sitting at the lolly buffet with her head in her hands in the table staring at the lollies but not touching because she knew she wasn't allowed until she was told she could. Adorable. And also proof that young kids can behave at weddings if they're taught to. Commenter You Sky Eyes 9 shares, my daughter was 4 when she was a flower girl and perfectly behaved during the wedding ceremony and reception. There you go. More evidence that 4-year-olds aren't automatically wedding ruining monsters. But commenter You Sky Eyes 9 also shares a contrasting story. A friend of mine has a 4-year-old son who ruined a baby shower by knocking the table with the cake and other desserts over. He was climbing on it, digging into the cake, and it all toppled over. Okay, so yes, some 4-year-olds are disasters, but that's a parenting issue, not an age issue. And again, there's zero indication that the writer's kids are like this. The whole age argument is actually kind of insulting when you think about it. The sister is basically saying, I don't trust your kids to behave, but I trust cousins' kids. Even if that's not explicitly stated, that's the message being sent. Now let's talk about the logistics and travel argument, because several commenters brought up the idea that flying across the country is different than driving 4 hours. Commenter U Lins 27 says, cousins' kids will just be at the wedding. Sister's kids will end up being at the rehearsal, any other wedding events, and have potential to pull attention away from OP's parents, grandparents, any other siblings when the attention should be on the bride and groom. Hold on, who said the writer's kids would be at all the wedding events? The writer specifically said she made arrangements for them to be watched. They wouldn't be pulling attention from anyone because they wouldn't be there. This argument makes zero sense. Commenter U/H Alexa tries to rationalize it. Flying from across the country with 2 kids is probably not what cousin wants to do with 2 kids, and this is a multi-day, multi-night trip. But if she doesn't have the luxury of having in-laws or a husband to watch her kids, this is the only way she can come. Okay, couple things here. One, we know cousin doesn't have a husband or in-laws or anyone. That's an assumption. Two, if childcare is truly that impossible for cousin, maybe she doesn't come. Like, that's also an option. Three, why is cousin's inability to arrange childcare the writer's problem to solve by being treated unfairly? Commenter UH Alexa continues, sister is traveling 4 hours and has in-laws to watch her kids on the single night she needs care for. These situations are completely different. Except they're not completely different. Both require overnight childcare. Both require arrangements. Both cost money. The only difference is duration and distance. And honestly, that's the cousin's problem, not a reason to treat the sister unfairly. Here's my take on the logistics argument. I don't care if cousin is flying in from Mars. If you make a rule for your wedding, you apply it to everyone, or you accept that people are going to be upset when you don't. Period. The sister could have handled this so many different ways. Option 1, stick to the child-free rule for everyone, including cousin. If cousin can't find childcare, she doesn't come. Sorry, but that's life. Option 2, change the rule to kids over 8 or kids over 10 and apply it fairly to everyone. Option 3, make the wedding actually family-friendly and include all the kids. Option 4, provide childcare at the wedding venue so people can bring kids who will be watched separately. Instead, she chose option 5, make arbitrary exceptions and hope nobody gets mad about the blatant favoritism. How'd that work out for you, sis? Now, there's a whole other angle to this that some commenters brought up, and it's juicy. Commenter U Novel Ad 1943 drops this observation. I think OP enjoys the attention her kids get, and that the family tends to revolve around the first daughter to get married and the first grandkids. It's not terrible to feel that way, but self-honesty is key. Little sister's wedding is about her and her fiance. It's okay for her to want a different type of wedding and for the day to be about them, not 2 small children who will be bored. Whoa, 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 whoa. Where is this coming from? The writer never said anything about wanting attention for her kids or the family revolving around her. She literally just said her kids are close with their aunt and would be hurt to be excluded while other kids aren't. This feels like a reach and honestly, kind of a nasty one. We're going to psychoanalyze the writer and accuse her of being attention seeking because she pointed out an unfair double standard? Come on. Commenter U Novel Eddie 1943 continues. Sometimes we sacrifice and do a thing we don't love because we do it for a loved one. So yeah, I'm feeling YTA energy for OP in this case. I'm sorry, but how is spending hundreds of extra dollars and rearranging your entire schedule not sacrificing? The writer was fully prepared to do that until she found out the rule doesn't actually apply to everyone. That's not failing to sacrifice. That's realizing you're being taken advantage of. There's also this angle that keeps coming up about whether the kids would even enjoy the wedding. Commenter u slash content row 37116 shares a story about her kids being in weddings at ages 5 and 7. One of them was child free, but because they were in the wedding, they were obviously the exception. That wedding was not fun for them. And my son told me later that he never wanted to be in a wedding again because it was so boring. Okay, so maybe the kids wouldn't have a great time. Maybe they'd be bored. But you know what? That's for the parents to decide, not the bride. If the writer thinks her kids can handle it and wants to include them in this family event, that's her call. If she thinks they'd be miserable and would rather leave them home, that's also her call. But it should be her decision, not one made for her based on arbitrary rules that don't apply to everyone. And here's something nobody's really talking about. This isn't just about the wedding day itself. This is about the message being sent. The message is cousin and her kids are more important than sister and her kids. The message is your kids aren't good enough to be included when other kids are. The message is I'll bend the rules for some people, but not for you. Those messages hurt. They damage relationships. They create resentment that lasts for years. Commenter U Sticks and String nails it. Yeah, good point. Child free means free of all children. Making an exception turns it into some children are welcome, but yours aren't, which is where the hurt feelings come in. Exactly. That's the crux of the issue right there. When you say child free and then some kids show up, everyone who left their kids at home and spent money and effort to do so is going to feel like a chump. They're going to feel like they jumped through hoops for a rule that didn't actually matter. Commenter Use Merriam67 points this out. NTA, it's a very bad decision she's made because everyone at the wedding who paid for childcare will be angry at her, not just you. Oh, absolutely. You know there are going to be other parents at this wedding who arranged expensive childcare, and when they see cousins' kids running around, they're going to be pissed. The sister is creating drama for herself, and honestly, she deserves whatever blowback she gets. Multiple commenters suggest the writer should just skip the wedding entirely. Commenter u/environmental sir 8140 says, NTA, I wouldn't attend the wedding. Why do the cousins' children get to attend but not yours? Total BS. Commenter Da Duchess 1025 has my favorite suggestion. NTA, I think you should listen to your mom and let it go, like Elsa. Let the travel plans go, let the hotel go, let the wedding go. Since you now have a free weekend, do something fun with your family. Yes, take all that money you would have spent on travel, hotels, childcare arrangements, and wedding gifts, and do something fun with your kids instead. Go to a water park. Take a mini vacation. Make some actually good memories instead of attending an event where you're being treated like a second-class guest. Commenter u/straight coconut 3117 sums it up perfectly. This is why the wedding couple are free to make a no children rule, but it has to be evenly applied to everyone on both sides of the family. Of course, feelings are hurt when some children are welcome and others aren't. It's not a rule if it only applies to certain children. And that's the thing. The sister has every right to make whatever rules she wants for her wedding, but the writer has every right to decide those rules are unfair and choose not to attend. Freedom works both ways, sis. Now, there are some commenters who think the writer should just suck it up and go. Commenter u/typeamama says, YWBTA, if you didn't attend your sister's wedding for this reason, she clearly wanted it to be child-free, felt really pushed into making an exception for her cousin due to her circumstances. First of all, nobody pushed her into anything. She chose to make an exception. Own that choice. Second, why should the writer have to set aside her completely valid feelings to make the bride comfortable when the bride wouldn't do the same? Commenter you so that's just great makes this argument. Your sister and her fiance have been clear on the kind of wedding they want. They invited me to that wedding and I accepted. Now they have had to make an exception. And rather than shrug and resolve to bring the party twice as hard, I am hoping to take advantage and push their wedding even further from what they want to suit myself. But the writer isn't trying to take advantage. She was fine with the child-free rule when it actually was child-free. It's only after learning about the exception that she's upset, and that's completely reasonable. This isn't about wanting special treatment. It's about wanting equal treatment. Commenter Yulash Comfortable Cow 3186 gets pretty harsh. YTA. I'm so tired of all this. It's her wedding. The rules are what she and her partner set them to be. If they make an exception for someone, they don't have to explain that to you or anybody else. Okay, first off, rude. Second, yes, the bride can make exceptions without explaining, but the writer can also decide not to attend without explaining beyond, I don't want to. See how that works? This commenter continues, but this whole, well, I just want the rules to be equal, like this isn't a government dealing with human rights. It's a private wedding that one couple is putting together. They literally get to do whatever they want on their one special day. Nobody's saying the bride can't do whatever she wants. We're saying her choices have consequences, and one of those consequences is her sister feeling hurt and disrespected. You can't have it both ways. You can't demand everyone respect your choices while simultaneously dismissing their feelings about those choices. Now let's talk about what I think the writer should do, because I have opinions. Option 1, don't go at all. Save the money, spend the weekend doing something fun with your family, send a card and a modest gift. Your mental health and family harmony are worth more than attending an event where you're being treated as less than. Option 2, go to the ceremony only, skip the reception, show face, be supportive, but don't shell out for a whole weekend and hotel and everything else. Option 3, go to everything, but make it clear you're not happy about the double standard. Be polite, be civil, but don't pretend everything's fine when it's not. Option 4, my personal favorite, go to the wedding, and when people ask where your kids are, be honest. Oh, the wedding is child-free, so we had to arrange childcare. Well, except for cousins' kids, they got an exception. But not ours. Say it with a smile. Let the awkwardness land where it belongs, on the bride who created this mess. What I would not do, pretend everything is fine. Fake happiness you don't feel. Act like this double standard is no big deal, because it is a big deal. And the sister needs to understand that her choices have impact. Several commenters brought up the point that the writer might regret missing her sister's wedding years down the road. Commenter U/background party 814 says, dude, do not listen to this advice. It's your sister, and she is being an asshole, but she doesn't want to realize this. She is absolutely wrong, but if you don't go, you will regret it for the rest of your life. I actually disagree with this. You know what the writer might also regret? Spending a bunch of money to attend an event where she was disrespected, setting a precedent that it's okay for her sister to treat her unfairly, and teaching her kids that you should just accept poor treatment from family. Those are also potential regrets, and in my opinion, worse ones. Sometimes the right choice is to stand your ground even when it's hard, even when family pressure says to just go along to get along, even when people say, but you'll regret it. You know what I think the writer would regret more? Looking back and thinking, I let my sister treat me and my kids as less important than a cousin, and I spent hundreds of dollars for the privilege. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Is this going to damage the relationship between the sisters? Probably, yeah. But here's the thing. The sister already damaged the relationship by creating this double standard. The writer is just responding to damage that's already been done. Commenter Use Meterific says it perfectly. Bride can make whatever rules she wants, but if she's not fair with her actual sister, she might get stiff blowback. Actions have consequences. The sister made her choice. She chose to prioritize cousin's needs, or wants, let's be real, over her own sister's feelings. She chose to create a rule and then break it for someone who isn't even immediate family. Those were her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences. If the relationship is damaged, that's on her, not on the writer, for having completely understandable feelings about being treated unfairly. Commenter U/used clock 4627 adds, exactly. It's still going to be her day. It just means OP and husband aren't there, which is something the bride has to accept because of her choices on her day. Yep, you don't get to make choices and then be mad when people react to those choices. That's not how adulting works. Let me also address this "it's her day" nonsense one more time because it really grinds my gears. Yes, your wedding day is special. Yes, you should get to make choices about how you celebrate. But your wedding day is not a free pass to treat people however you want with zero consequences. You don't get to demand people spend hundreds of dollars, rearrange their lives, find and pay for childcare, and then say, but some other people don't have to follow those rules because I said so, and expect everyone to just smile and nod. That's not reasonable. That's not fair. And people have every right to push back. A wedding is supposed to be about joining two families and celebrating love. It's supposed to be about bringing people together. When you start excluding family members, especially children who are your actual nieces and nephews, while including others, you're kind of missing the whole point. Commenter you timely nothing 4973 brings up another great point about the OP won't be fully present if her kids are there argument. It's kind of a wild assumption that sister's husband, assuming he's kid's dad, couldn't take full responsibility for kids so sister could be fully present. That's how husband and I do events, his friends, family. I take full parent duty and sacrifice my fun, my friends/family. It's reversed. Thank you. Why is everyone assuming the writer would be the one solely responsible for watching kids if they came? Her husband would be there too. They could tag team. One parent watches while the other enjoys the ceremony, then switch. This assumption that having kids present automatically means the mother can't be fully engaged is kind of sexist, honestly. I also want to address the comments suggesting the sister felt pressured to make an exception for cousin. Commenter u// aggravating finish 6 says, I feel like there are countless posts on Reddit about child-free weddings and people complaining that have 101 reasons why they should be able to bring their kids and why won't the bride and groom just make one exception. This is exactly why. The bride probably got pressured into making an exception and is now going to be punished by her sister, who does have childcare, albeit expensive, not going to her wedding. First of all, if the sister felt pressured, she should have said no. Being an adult means standing by your decisions even when it's uncomfortable. Second, the writer is not punishing anyone. She's making a choice based on how she's being treated. There's a difference. Third, we have no evidence the sister was pressured. That's pure speculation. Maybe she wanted to make an exception for cousin. Maybe she's closer to cousin than to her own sister, which would be weird but okay. We don't know. What we do know is that the end result is unfair treatment, and the writer has every right to respond to that however she sees fit. Now, let's talk about what this is really about, because I don't think it's actually about the kids at all. This is about respect. This is about being valued. This is about being treated as important in your sister's life. When you make an exception for a cousin, but not for your own sister, what you're really saying is, this person matters more to me than you do. Even if that's not the intent, that's the message. And that hurts. The writer says it herself. What really bothered me wasn't even the kids being there. It's that the rule suddenly isn't a rule. It feels unfair. This is what it's actually about. It's about the principle of the thing. It's about being treated as less important. It's about arbitrary rules and favoritism and feeling disrespected. And you know what? Those are valid feelings. The sister can make all the wedding rules she wants, but she can't control how people feel about those rules. And when you treat your own sister as less important than a cousin, you're going to hurt her feelings. That's just reality. Commenter u/Lorward185 suggests NTA, and honestly, I would send an email to HR letting them know the importance of that week for you, and that her passive-aggressive statement about not having children was insensitive. If you really wanted to ham it up, you could imply infertility problems. And you feel that she may attempt to intimidate you into giving up your holiday, and you feel discriminated against for being childless. Wait, I think they mixed up their Reddit posts because this one isn't about work, but I love the energy of documenting everything and getting ahead of the narrative. In this case, I'd suggest the writer document everything too. The original child-free announcement, the exception for cousin, her polite request to also bring her kids, The sister's refusal, all of it, because you know the sister is going to spin this to the family as OP is being dramatic and refusing to come to my wedding over nothing. Get your side of the story straight and be ready to calmly explain it when family members inevitably start picking sides. Let's also talk about the mom for a second, because her role in this is interesting. Mom thinks the writer should just let it go because it's her day. Of course, mom says that. You know why? Because mom doesn't want to deal with family drama. Mom wants everyone to play nice and get along and not make waves. But here's the thing, Mom, sometimes family members treat each other poorly, and the person being treated poorly has every right to set boundaries. Telling the writer to just let it go is essentially saying, your feelings don't matter, keep the peace at your own expense. And that's BS. A good parent would say something like, uh, I understand you're hurt and your feelings are valid. I also understand your sister made a difficult choice. Let's talk through how you're feeling and what options you have. But instead, mom went straight to just let it go, which is dismissive and unhelpful. Thanks for nothing, mom. The husband, on the other hand, seems pretty solid. He thinks it's unfair because it is, but says he'll support whatever the writer decides. That's how you spouse, folks. You acknowledge the situation sucks, validate your partner's feelings, and offer support regardless of what they choose to do. Gold star for husband. Now, I've seen some comments suggesting that maybe the sister's kids are just badly behaved, and that's why they're not getting an exception. Commenter You Centaur Sage says, it's absolutely about the ages, and we don't know what the bride has experienced. Maybe OP's kids are less than perfect. I'm not saying that's definitely the case, but if they are rambunctious and difficult to control, then the aunt would be very aware of it and doesn't want the confrontation right now when she's trying to plan a wedding. Okay, first of all, rude. Where is this assumption coming from that the writer's kids are terrors? There's literally nothing in the post to suggest that. Second, even if the kids are more energetic than cousins' kids, which is normal for younger children, you handle that by saying no kids under 8 or something, not by saying child-free except for these specific kids I personally approve of. That's just mean, and it's obviously going to create hurt feelings. Commenter You Dance Mom Pro shares, try true. My daughter's wedding was child-free because of one specific child, and that was the only way she felt she could be sure he was excluded. She did have her 3 nieces in the wedding. Okay, so this bride wanted to exclude one specific nightmare child, so she made a blanket rule and then made exceptions for everyone. Except that kid? That's actually kind of genius in a devious way, but it's also exactly the kind of thing that creates the drama we're seeing in this post. If you have to ban everyone to exclude one person and then make a bunch of exceptions, you're creating a mess. Just own up and say this specific kid can't come and deal with that confrontation directly instead of making it weird for everyone. Several commenters point out that this is going to create drama at the wedding itself when other guests see kids there after being told it's child-free. Commenter U/head Razmataz 7174 lays it out. Your sister is going to get a lot of blowback from other parents who show up and see those 2 kids. Not to mention, the kids themselves are going to be miserable, as at that age, a wedding and reception are boring AF. Exactly. This is going to blow up in the sister's face either way. Either the writer doesn't come and there's family drama about that, or the writer comes and then other guests are pissed when they see kids there after arranging childcare themselves. The sister created this mess for herself, and honestly, I don't feel bad for her. Commenter Use Sticks and String adds, oh, for sure. There will be more backlash after the wedding when everyone who bent over backwards and rearranged their everything and probably spent extra money to arrange childcare for this child-free wedding shows up and sees children at the wedding. I'd be furious. Me too. If I jumped through hoops and spent money on childcare for a child-free wedding and then showed up to see kids running around, I'd be pissed. And I'd probably leave early and definitely wouldn't be giving a generous gift. You can't lie to people about what kind of event they're attending and then expect them to be happy about it. Now, There have been some really thoughtful comments about the logistics and circumstances being different. Commenter You Josie Joke makes the case that flying across the country for multiple days is different than driving 4 hours for a weekend, and that the cousin might not have been able to find childcare for that length of time in the same way the writer could. Okay, I hear that argument. I do. But here's my response. One, the cousin chose to have kids. Part of having kids is arranging childcare when needed, even for extended periods. Two, if the cousin truly cannot find childcare, then maybe she doesn't come. That's also an option. Three, there are options for extended childcare: flying a trusted person to her location, hiring a professional service, asking extended family, etc. It might be expensive or inconvenient, but so is what the writer is doing. Four, most importantly, the cousin's childcare difficulties are not the writer's problem to solve by being treated unfairly. Commenter UGMABCD says, I personally don't think that the cousin ranked higher than the sister. The sister definitely could arrange for someone she trusted to take care of the kids without an issue and is able to attend the wedding if she wants to. But the cousin couldn't, and she cannot attend the wedding if her children are not there with her. But here's my question. Why can't the cousin arrange childcare? We're just supposed to accept that as a given. In the entire country, across all her family and friends and professional services available, there's not a single option for childcare? I call BS. What's more likely is that the cousin doesn't want to arrange childcare, or it would be expensive, inconvenient, or she'd prefer to have her kids with her. And that's fine, but those are the same reasons the writer might want her kids there. If we're making exceptions based on it's hard to find childcare, then everyone should get that exception because finding childcare is hard for everyone. Commenter U/L/H Alexa tries to rationalize. I don't understand why so many people fail to see this. Flying from across the country with 2 kids is probably not what cousin wants to do with 2 kids, and this is a multi-day, multi-night trip. But if she doesn't have the luxury of having in-laws or a husband to watch her kids, this is the only way she can come. Again, we're assuming cousin doesn't have in-laws or a husband or anyone. We don't actually know that. And even if it's true, that doesn't make it the writer's problem. The writer says her kids adore their aunt and would be crushed to know they weren't invited while their second cousins were. You know what? Those feelings matter too. We're so busy trying to accommodate cousins' hypothetical childcare difficulties that we're completely dismissing the actual hurt being caused to the writer and her kids. That's backwards. I want to address one more argument that keeps coming up, that the writer should go because she'll regret missing her sister's wedding. Commenter U Mandy72 says, I don't think you are an AH, but I agree with your mom. Just suck it up and go. You don't have to forgive or forget, but I think someday you will regret it if you don't go, and it's not a decision that can be reversed. You know what, though? There are lots of decisions that can't be reversed, like the sister's decision to treat her unfairly. That can't be reversed either, and it's already done damage to the relationship. The writer attending or not attending won't fix that damage. It's already there, and I genuinely don't think the writer would regret not going. I think she'd regret spending a bunch of money to be there while being disrespected. I think she'd regret teaching her kids that you should accept poor treatment from family. I think she'd regret not standing up for herself. Sometimes the brave choice, the right choice, is to skip the event, to say, I deserve better treatment than this, and I'm not going to pretend everything's fine when it's not. That's not punishing anyone. That's self-respect. And you know what else? If the sister regrets her choice to create this double standard, she can learn from it and do better in the future. That's called growth. Commenter Use 2 Fluffy Bunnies makes an interesting point. This, wisest advice here. I get why OP is upset, and it may feel unfair, but ultimately the wedding is about celebrating and supporting your sister, not you. And she wanted a child-free wedding, period. Due to cousin's circumstances, she made one exception. It doesn't change that she wants a child-free wedding. Your sister isn't choosing your cousin over you or your cousin's kids over yours. Except she kind of is, though. By making an exception for cousin but not for sister, she literally is choosing cousin over sister. That's exactly what's happening here. And she wanted a child-free wedding, period. Except not period, because there are kids coming. You can't say period when there are literal exceptions to the rule. This commenter continues, if you can't stand the idea of supporting and celebrating your sister on the biggest day of her life because the event doesn't revolve around you, perhaps you're focusing on the wrong person here. Wow, way to twist it into making the writer seem selfish. Pointing out unfair treatment is not the same as wanting the event to revolve around you. This is such a bad faith argument, and I'm calling it out. The writer isn't asking for the wedding to revolve around her. She's asking to be treated with the same consideration as a cousin. That's not unreasonable. Okay, let's talk about what I think the sister should have done here, because there were so many better ways to handle this. Better option one, stick to the child-free rule for everyone. No exceptions. If cousin can't come because of childcare, that sucks. But that's what happens when you have a child-free wedding. Some people can't/won't attend. Better option two, make the rule no kids under 10 or whatever age makes sense and apply it fairly to everyone. Better option three, arrange for childcare at the wedding venue. Hire a babysitter or two, set up a kids' room with movies and activities. Let parents bring kids who will be watched separately from the main event. Better option four, have an actually family-friendly wedding where all the kids are welcome. Better option five, when making the exception for cousin, proactively reach out to sister and say, hey, I know I said child-free, but I'm making an exception for cousin because reasons. I want to be fair, so I'm also happy to make an exception for your kids if you'd like to bring them. See? That would have solved everything. The sister would feel valued, the rules would be applied fairly, everyone's happy. But instead, the sister made a secret exception, didn't tell anyone, and is now mad that people found out and are upset about it. That's on her. So let's get to the million-dollar question. Is the writer the asshole? Absolutely not. Not the asshole. Not even a little bit. Not even 0.00001%. The writer initially respected the child-free rule without complaint, arranged expensive, complicated childcare to accommodate the rule, only got upset when she learned the rule doesn't apply to everyone, politely asked if an exception could be made for her too, is considering not attending rather than causing drama at the wedding, has completely valid feelings about being treated unfairly. The sister made a child-free rule and then broke it, treated her sister as less important than a cousin, refused to extend the same exception to her own nieces and nephews, accused her sister of making it about her for pointing out the double standard, is creating drama that could have been easily avoided. The verdict is clear. Not the asshole. The sister can make whatever rules she wants for her wedding. That's her right. But she doesn't get to make arbitrary, unfair rules and then cry victim when people are hurt by them. You don't get to treat your sister poorly and then be shocked when she doesn't want to spend hundreds of dollars to attend your wedding. You don't get to create double standards and then act like people are being unreasonable for pointing them out. And you definitely don't get to say, it's my day, as a shield against all criticism while simultaneously expecting everyone to bend over backwards to accommodate your every whim. That's not how life works. That's not how family works. And it's not how being a decent human being works. The writer should do whatever feels right for her. If that means not going, then don't go. If it means going, but keeping it minimal, ceremony only, no gift, etc., then do that. If it means going and being polite but honest about why she's hurt, then do that. But what she should not do is pretend everything's fine when it's not. She should not swallow her feelings to make everyone else comfortable. She should not teach her kids that you just accept unfair treatment from family without pushing back. Stand your ground, writer. You're not being unreasonable. You're not being dramatic. You're not being selfish. You're being a person with self-respect who recognizes when they're being treated poorly and chooses not to accept it. And there's nothing asshole about that. Not the asshole. Case closed. Gavel down. Sister can enjoy her child-free wedding with cousin's kids running around while her own sister isn't there, and she can spend the rest of her life wondering why there's distance in their relationship. Maybe next time she'll think twice before creating arbitrary double standards. Am I the asshole for refusing to give up my approved time off to a coworker because she says her situation matters more than mine? All right, folks, strap in because we're about to talk about the audacity, the unmitigated gall, the sheer entitlement of some people. This one's got me fired up, and I'm about to go full Judge Judy on this situation because honestly, I have zero patience for this nonsense. So, our writer works at a small company with one of those first come, first served vacation policies. You know the type. You snooze, you lose. And our writer did not snooze. Back at the beginning of the year, they put in for a week off in the fall for their anniversary trip with their wife. Flights booked, rental paid for, coordinated with another couple who's joining them. Everything locked in for months. This isn't some last minute, oh, I think I'll take a random Tuesday off situation. This is a planned, paid for, non refundable anniversary trip. But wait, because here comes the coworker with the kind of request that makes my blood pressure spike. Last week, mind you, this coworker comes up to our writer asking if they could just, casually move their entire vacation because she just realized her kids have a school break that same week and she doesn't have childcare lined up. She forgot to check the school calendar when she was doing her time off requests at the beginning of the year. Let me repeat that. She forgot to check the school calendar. Listen, I'm calling bull on that right now. You know what parents get at the beginning of every school year? A calendar. You know what's on that calendar? Every single break, early release day, teacher conference day, and holiday for the entire year. This isn't some surprise pop quiz. This isn't a randomly announced snow day. This is a scheduled break that's been on the calendar since before school even started. And according to the comments, it gets even better. Commenter u/Governor Sand points out that in Florida, at least, the school calendar is set before school starts, and parents get the full calendar on or before the first day. The fall break is several months after school starts. She had months to plan for this. But it gets worse, people. So much worse. Commenter U Catamino drops the real tea. The calendar in my district for 2026-2027 was approved and posted in the fall of 2025. Read that again. School districts are posting calendars more than a year in advance. This coworker had literally a year to figure this out, and she forgot to check. I'm sorry, but that's not forgetting. That's just not giving a damn until it became her problem. And commenter U/Megan Skegan, who works at a school, says their district does academic calendars 2 years in advance, and they're working on the 28 to 29 calendar to have it 3 years out. The calendar for 26 to 27 has been posted since last spring. So this woman either A, doesn't pay attention to literally anything regarding her children's school schedule, B, is lying about forgetting and something else fell through, C, thought she could just guilt trip someone into giving up their vacation rental fries. I'm going with option C, folks. Our writer, being a reasonable human being, said, I can't. I already have non-refundable flights and the whole trip is planned around that specific week. Polite. Straightforward, not rude, just facts. And how does this coworker respond? Does she say, oh gosh, you're right, I really messed up, I'll figure something out? Nope. She gets visibly upset and says, and I quote, it must be nice to not have to worry about kids and that people without children don't understand how impossible it is to juggle everything. Excuse me while I scream into the void. She then has the nerve to say that parents should get priority for school breaks because it's not like I need that specific week. I just want it. I'm sorry. What? Since when does popping out a kid give you priority over someone else's pre-approved, already paid for vacation? Did I miss the memo where having children automatically makes you the main character in everyone else's lives? Our writer says that part stung, honestly. And yeah, no kidding, it stung. This woman basically just said, your marriage, your anniversary, your plans, your life doesn't matter as much as mine because you don't have kids. That's not just rude, that's straight up discriminatory and insulting on multiple levels. And here's something that really gets me. We don't even know why the writer and their wife don't have kids. Maybe it's by choice, which is 100% valid, but maybe it's not by choice. Maybe they've struggled with infertility. Maybe they've had miscarriages. Maybe they can't have kids and it's a source of pain for them. Commenter UTrVLVR nails this. It could be by choice, which is totally okay, but it could be infertility. Maybe they can't have kids and she's making such comments. I struggled with infertility, and if someone said this to me, I'd lose it. That comment about must be nice not to have to worry about kids could be devastating to someone dealing with infertility. And even if it's not, even if the writer chose to be child free, that comment is still completely out of line. Your reproductive choices or circumstances don't determine the value of your time off. Commenter u/librarymouse4321 suggests the perfect response. Must be nice to be able to have kids. I'm living for that energy. Make it awkward. Make her feel the sting of her own thoughtless comments. Thoughtless comments. Let's talk about this I don't have childcare excuse for a second. It's February. The fall is 7 to 9 months away. She has basically the length of a human pregnancy to figure out childcare, and she's acting like this is some impossible task? Commenter u/thatjanedoe69 points out, it's only mid-February right now. She has 7 to 9 months to figure childcare out. That is more than enough time to figure that out. You know what you can do in 7 to 9 months? Build a whole support network. Line up multiple babysitters. Research summer camps and fall break programs. Talk to other parents about swapping childcare. Figure out if extended family can help. There are options. She just doesn't want to explore them because it's easier to try to guilt trip a coworker. Commenter Uslak goes into detail about all the childcare options available. Honestly, she has months to arrange alternative childcare for that week, and a lot of places offer week-long childcare camps for students during vacation weeks, like dance, gymnastics, music centers, the YMCA, churches, community centers, and even daycare centers that also do after-school programs. So this isn't about her not being able to find childcare. This is about her not wanting to pay for childcare or put in the effort to arrange it. She thought it would be easier to just take someone else's pre-approved vacation week. And you know what no one is talking about? Where's the kid's father in all this? Why is childcare automatically her sole responsibility? Commenter u/ally calamity asks the real question. Why can't the father of her kids step up? Exactly. If she's married or co-parenting, why isn't the other parent taking time off? Why isn't that even part of the conversation? Why is it automatically assumed that she needs to be home with the kids, and therefore someone else needs to sacrifice their plans? This whole thing reeks of weaponized incompetence and entitlement. Let's break down what our writer did right. Requested time off early following company policy, booked travel and accommodations in advance, coordinated with others involved in the trip, politely declined when asked to change plans, didn't get into an argument or be rude. And what the coworker did wrong: failed to check the school calendar when requesting time off, waited until the last minute to try to fix her mistake, expected someone else to sacrifice for her poor planning, made rude, insensitive comments about childless people, implied that parents deserve priority over non-parents, completely disregarded that the writer has non-refundable expenses. The entitlement is staggering. Commenter u/banana no 1083 sums it up perfectly. Her poor planning is not your emergency, and the idea that childless people's plans are automatically less important is so tired. So tired. I am exhausted by this narrative that people without kids are just sitting around with nothing important going on in their lives, just waiting to accommodate parents who can't get their act together. Commentary Raven Style adds, her emergency is that she just forgets to look at the calendar. Your life doesn't stop because she messed up everything. And commenter our Viper Bunny, who has kids, calls it like it is. I have kids. The calendar is released early. They also tend to send lots of notices about days off. She messed up and that's on her. No one should have to change their plans for her. Thank you. A parent with some sense and personal responsibility. Now let's talk about the financial aspect here, because the coworker seems to think the writer can just casually move their trip. Commenter Yuv Lil Borzoi has the right idea. Tally up all the non-refundable amounts for the whole group and add 10% for your inconvenience, and tell her these are costs that you can't get back, so she will have to pay you that in the next 30 days in full to get your time. Exactly. You want this time off so bad? Here's what it's going to cost. Non-refundable flights for 2 people. Non-refundable rental hotel, the same costs for the other couple who's going with them. Cancellation fees. higher prices for rebooking on shorter notice, coordination costs and inconvenience. I'm guessing we're talking thousands of dollars here, possibly $5 to $10,000 or more, depending on where they're going and what they've booked. Is this coworker ready to cut that check? I'm going to go with a hard no on that one. Commenter u/chemical author 7080 says, hand her an invoice for how much money you will lose canceling last minute. Tell her if she can reimburse you. You'll be happy to switch. Watch how fast she backpedals when actual money is involved. Suddenly finding a babysitter won't seem so impossible after all. Let's also address the elephant in the room. This whole parents should get priority mentality is discrimination. Period. Commenter Ujaziel 2025 calls it out. The bit about it being nice not to have to worry about kids is blatant manipulation, a shame tactic to make you back down. And any talk about parents should be getting preference is discrimination against people without kids. In a workplace, you can't give preferential treatment based on parental status. That's literally discrimination. If the company policy is first come, first served, then that's the policy. You don't get to jump the line because you have kids. Commenter U, Pilot Environmental 46, lays it out. She chose to have children. That's her responsibility. The idea that somehow because she did that, she should get priority over childless people is absolutely idiotic. Thank you. Having kids is a choice in most cases. And with that choice comes responsibility. Part of that responsibility is planning your life around your children's schedules, making sure you have childcare options, and not expecting other people to accommodate your failures to plan. Several commenters shared their own experiences with this kind of entitlement. Commenter Use Remarkable Dark 7628 says, I worked with someone that threw the single parent in my face as the reason they shouldn't do any overtime and somehow her kids should be my problem. I refused to play that game. She complained to boss and HR. My response to both was, how do I go about having kids to get out of shared responsibility when I'm always at work? Exactly. When did having kids become a get out of work free card? Commenter u/the real Carpophilus shares. I was a single, divorced, but ex wanted nothing to do with our daughter, mom when my daughter was 3 to 10 years old. I never expected anyone to make sacrifices for me because I had a child. This woman's entitlement is disgusting. Look at that. A parent who actually takes responsibility and doesn't expect the world to revolve around them. It can be done. And commenter u/Jen Lujan Bull says, dude, I've got 5 kids and wouldn't expect someone to give up their vacation time for me. Some people are just entitled. 5 kids and still doesn't expect special treatment. Amazing what a basic decency looks like. The comment section also got into a whole discussion about school calendars and when they're released, which honestly just makes the coworker look worse. Multiple people confirmed that calendars are released anywhere from a few months to years in advance. Commenter U Chemical Pattern 480 says, our 25-26 and 26-27 came out before the end of the 24-25 school year. Commenter U Useless Education 35. My district publishes 3 years worth of calendars. This year, next year, and the year after that. There is zero excuse for a parent forgetting the holidays. So not only did she have plenty of time to know about this break, she probably got reminded about it multiple times through school newsletters, emails, automated messages, etc. Schools are constantly communicating with parents about upcoming events and breaks. There's literally no excuse for not knowing. Some commenters suggested the coworker might be lying entirely. Commenter u/Brave Engineering 133 says, I don't believe her that she didn't know. I suspect something else happened, like her planned person or place for the children to go fell through, and that suddenly made her need time off that week. That actually makes way more sense. Maybe she had a relative who was going to watch the kids and they bailed. Maybe she had the kids signed up for a camp that got canceled. Something fell through, and instead of dealing with it like an adult, she decided to try to make it someone else's problem. Commenter u/Shadow for Summer adds, or she decided she wanted to do something with her kids. No, she doesn't get to unless someone else gives in to her demands. Bingo. I'd bet money she wants to take her own vacation that week. Maybe there's a trip she wants to take with the kids. Maybe there's somewhere she wants to go. This isn't about childcare at all. It's about her wanting that specific week off and trying to use her kids as an excuse to guilt someone into giving it up. Commenter u slash Red Rose Beetle hits the nail on the head. She didn't forget to check the school calendar. When you have children, you center your life around the school calendar. Her planned childcare fell through, or she planned to quit by now, but is having a hard time finding a job. The more I think about it, the more I'm convinced she's straight up lying. No parent forgets about a week-long school break. That's not how parenting works. You know when your kids are off school because it affects literally everything about your daily routine. Now let's talk about what our writers should do going forward, because I have opinions. First, enjoy your damn trip. Don't feel guilty for 1 second. You did everything right. You followed the rules. You planned ahead. This is not your problem. Second, I'd document this interaction and send it to HR, not to get the coworker in trouble necessarily, but to create a paper trail, because I guarantee this woman is going to complain to management about how unfair this is and how she's being discriminated against as a parent. Get ahead of it. Commenter U Spiritual Handle 2983 advises, her lack of planning is not your issue. I would mention something to your manager or HR was very unprofessional. Commenter U slash Loreward 185 goes even further. I would send an email to HR letting them know the importance of that week for you and that her passive aggressive statement about not having children was insensitive. If you really wanted to ham it up, you could imply infertility problems. And you feel that she may attempt to intimidate you into giving up your holiday, and you feel discriminated against for being childless, get out ahead of this thing before she makes an issue of it. Record and document. Smart, because you know she's going to try to paint herself as the victim here. She's going to go crying to anyone who will listen about how she has kids and needs this time, and how cruel it is that management won't just make the childless person give up their vacation. Get your version on record first. Third, if she brings it up again, have a response ready. Here are some options. Option 1, professional. As I explained, I have non-refundable travel booked. This isn't negotiable. Option 2, slightly petty. If you'd like to reimburse me for all the non-refundable expenses, including for the other couple joining us, I'd be happy to calculate that total for you. Option 3, nuclear. My time off is just as valuable as yours, regardless of whether I have children. Your comment about people without kids was inappropriate, and I won't be discussing this further. Pick whichever fits your personality in the situation. Commenter you Miss Bobby Doll keeps it simple. Girl, go to hell. That's what you should have told her. While I appreciate the energy, that might get you called into HR. But the sentiment? Chef's kiss. Fourth, be prepared for her to try to poison the well with other coworkers. She's going to play the victim. She's going to try to get others on her side. Don't engage with gossip. Just stick to the facts. You requested time off first, following company policy, and you have non-refundable travel booked. Commenter you wish he was in Alaska gives good advice. No is a complete sentence. It will absolutely set a precedent. Many people tend to forget that the workplace is for work. There is no requirement to be friends. You don't owe her your life story. You don't owe her justification. No is enough. And finally, watch your back next year when time off requests open up again. Commenter you Morris 9024 warns. Be wary. If you're still with your company next year, choice weeks may be reserved as soon as they can be by her. You know this woman is going to be camping out at her computer ready to snap up every school break week the second requests open. Be ready for that. Let's also address some of the comments suggesting our writer should help her find childcare. Respectfully, no, absolutely not. That's not your job. You're not her personal assistant or her childcare coordinator. Commenter you Forsaken Law 3488 suggests, ask around if you know anyone who offers childcare. Give her the contact. Do so while others are around so bad-mouthing won't work. Hard pass. You know what's going to happen if you do that? She's going to complain that the referrals aren't good enough or too expensive or too far away or whatever other excuse she can come up with. And then she'll still try to guilt trip you, except now you've opened the door to further discussion. Don't do it. Her childcare needs are her problem to solve, not yours. Some people might think I'm being harsh, but she's stressed, Parenting is hard. Have some compassion. You know what? Fine. Parenting is hard. I'm not disputing that. But you know what else is hard? Planning and saving for an anniversary trip, coordinating schedules with another couple, dealing with non-refundable bookings, and having someone try to guilt you into throwing all of that away because they failed to plan. Commenter you time traveler score 948 tries to take a balanced approach. Your coworker is valid in her stress, but totally the AH for laying her stress on you. Sure, she can be stressed, but that doesn't give her the right to make her stress everyone else's problem. The bottom line here is this: having children does not make you more important than people without children. Your time is not more valuable, your plans are not more valid, your needs don't automatically supersede everyone else's. Commenter use RayRay6672 has the perfect mantra. My response in these situations is always, your children do not have precedence in my life. Print that on a t-shirt, frame it, tattoo it on your forehead, because it's the truth. You chose to have kids. Great. Wonderful. I'm happy for you. But that was your choice, and the logistics that come with that choice are your responsibility, not your coworkers, not your neighbors, not random strangers. Yours. Commenter Use Briz Tortello says it perfectly. Kids are a choice, like she chose to ignore the school calendar. Both were choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences of her choices, which include finding childcare for a week she knew about for months. Now let's talk about the company's role in this, because there's some blame to go around here too. If you're running a small company where losing one person for a week creates a crisis, that's a management problem, not an employee problem. Commenter u/coffee with subtext makes this point. Honestly, she should find another job where more than one person can be off at a time. What happens if one of her kids gets the flu or she got sick and someone else was out? This is definitely not your problem. Exactly. Proper staffing and coverage should not depend on guilting employees into giving up approved time off. If the company can't function with one person out, that's a business model problem. But that's not on our writer to solve. They followed the rules, they did their part, and the company approved their time off. End of story. Some commenters pointed out plot holes that make this story seem suspicious. Commenter Lizzie M102 notes, how has everything been locked in for months if you put in the request at the beginning of the year, which was around 6 weeks ago? It's February, so anything this fall would be at least 7 months away. Fair point. Either the writer requested time off back in like November, December for the next year, or the timeline is a bit fuzzy. But honestly, that doesn't change the fundamental issue. Even if they requested it in January, it's still first come, first served, and they still have non-refundable travel booked. Commenter u/beadhead44 is also skeptical. Well, the good news is she has plenty of time to find childcare for the 1 week her kids are off during the fall, which is 6 months away. So I'm not sure this story makes any sense. Again, fair. The timeline is a little wonky, but I've seen enough entitled parents in my time to know that this kind of entitlement is real, whether this specific story is or not. Commenter Quick Possession 245 asks, why do people repost stuff? And honestly, that's a valid question. This does read like several other posts I've seen. The childless person versus entitled parent coworker vacation showdown is apparently a whole genre of am I the asshole posts. Either it's the same person karma farming, or this is just a really common situation. Given what I know about entitled parents, I'm going with the latter. But real or not, the principle stands. You don't have to give up your pre-approved vacation because someone else failed to plan. Period. End of discussion. Let me be absolutely clear about something. I'm not anti-parent. I'm not anti-kid. What I am anti is entitlement. I'm anti-people who think their life choices give them the right to dictate everyone else's. I'm anti-people who refuse to take responsibility for their own poor planning and instead try to make it everyone else's emergency. Commenter Engchick79 has the perfect response. Yes, it is really nice not to worry about kids. No, I don't understand how hard it is to juggle everything. Good luck. You are NTA. Short, sweet, to the point, and shuts down any further discussion. And you know what our writers should definitely not do? They should not feel guilty. Not even a little bit. Because that's exactly what this coworker is counting on. She's banking on the writer feeling bad and caving. Don't give her that satisfaction. Commenter/old man kibitzer drops wisdom. I always think piss poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. That phrase has been around forever because it's true. Your failure to plan is not my crisis to solve. Handle your business and I'll handle mine. Look, at the end of the day, this situation is simple. 1. Writer requested time off following company policy. 2. Writer made non-refundable travel arrangements. 3. Coworker failed to check school calendar. 4. Coworker waited too long to fix her mistake. 5. Coworker tried to guilt writer into solving her problem. 6. Coworker made inappropriate comments about childless people. The math isn't mathing in the coworker's favor, folks. So, is our writer the asshole? Absolutely not. Not even a tiny little bit. Not even 0.001%. The coworker is 100% the asshole here. She's entitled, she's rude, she's manipulative, and she's trying to make her poor planning everyone else's problem. Our writer followed company policy, planned ahead responsibly, made financial commitments based on approved time off, politely but firmly declined an unreasonable request, is willing to stand their ground despite guilt tripping. The coworker failed to plan appropriately, tried to guilt someone into giving up their vacation, made discriminatory comments about childless people, showed zero respect for other people's time and money, acted entitled to special treatment because she has kids. Not the asshole. Like, so not the asshole that I'm actually kind of annoyed. This is even a question. To our writer, take your trip. Have an amazing anniversary with your wife. Toast to another year of marriage while this coworker is calling around desperately trying to find a babysitter because she couldn't be bothered to check a calendar that's been posted for months. Post some beautiful vacation photos on social media if you're feeling petty. Bring back a tacky souvenir for your desk. Live your best life. And don't spare a single thought for this entitled coworker who thought her kids gave her the right to your pre-approved vacation. And to anyone else dealing with this kind of situation, your time matters, your plans matter, your life matters. Whether you have kids or not, don't let anyone make you feel like your life is less valuable because you made different choices than they did. Having kids doesn't make you special, it makes you a parent. And part of being a parent is planning ahead and not expecting the world to bend to your failures. Enjoy your trip, writer. You've earned it, not the asshole. Case closed. Gavel down, get out of my courtroom with that nonsense.